Live from Los Angeles to stations up and down the West Coast and nationwide on iHeart Radio. This is KLEAN Radio, and it starts right now.
And welcome to the best of KLEAN Radio. Hi again, everybody. Pat O'Brien here, host of KLEAN Radio, alongside treatment professional Andrew Spanswick. We want to introduce you to our show about substance addiction, recovery, sobriety, mental health, and everything in between. Here at KLEAN Radio, that's KLEAN with a K, we provide the forum to end the stigma, educate, and have an open dialogue about addiction. Helping out a mix of celebrities, sober comedians, and treatment experts. Sit back, relax, turn up the volume. This is the best of KLEAN Radio.
We have a great guest tonight, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Wendy Walsh and I. Do I have to call you doctor?
Yes, you do.
Oh,
No, I'm joking.
Right.
Only my mother would call me doctor if she were alive.
Well, God bless her. Dr. Walsh. Wendy and I hosted a show for about 1 million years together called How They Do That. And I think it's still on somewhere.
There's video of it all over the internet.
Yeah,
because people have been sending it to me today.
It was with my hair is orange in those videos. So Wendy and I spent long days together every day, and I write about all these women I work with in my book, which is called "I'll Be Back Right After This." Yep. And Wendy didn't make the cut because she was probably the best woman I've ever worked with. Hi, Wendy.
I'm actually reading this chapter 17 called Girls, by the way. I can't wait to get home in my bed and read about all these women in your life.
Wendy's a relationship expert, so Andrew, you and I might have 1,000 questions
I'm
for her.
scared to even speak.
We need you to speak.
Already we need to analyze about you and your dog.
I'm really worried. Yeah, my dog and I are very close.
So what we're about here is recovery, and recovery is a big word. I mean, so many things, and my credentials are. Is it my credentials are, right, doctor?
If there's more than one credential, then yes, it's R.
Hopefully.
Don't patronize me. I've been through it. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm in recovery. I don't like the stigma of the word alcoholic. We can get to that sometime. I've been to 4 rehabs because I didn't listen to the first 3, and the final one I got sober. 6 years ago, right now, I was in a mental hospital on the East Coast because not on a 5150, but they just didn't know what to do with me. And I finally got sober on November 5th, which is next Wednesday, and that'll be my 6th year, God willing.
Congratulations.
And Andrew, you know, and Wendy, you really know what I've been through in my life, and it's been a journey. I wouldn't take any of it back because it got me to this spot. But I've been through it, so that's my credentials. Andrew's credentials are spectacular because he is a mental health and addiction expert. And somehow everything does come down to mental health, doesn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I think that if you look at the population at large, at some point they're going to have everybody has some sort of mental health crisis, even if it's depression or anxiety. And often those can be the most devastating, and that's where we often see substance abuse coming in, where people start self-medicating and they get into problems with addiction and abuse.
It's about trouble managing the F word, feelings.
Yeah, that's a lot of it.
And when you start feeling your feelings, you feel weird because you haven't felt them before.
Right.
And you say, what do I need for this? And I think a lot of people, alcoholism and those diseases, it's the only disease where the cure is what got you there. In other words, the instant cure for feeling depressed.
All those awful feelings.
Are the feelings, and also drugs and alcohol. I mean, you think that you think the cure is if I could just get that one thing.
You are listening to KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. If you or somebody you know are battling addiction, call one of our treatment advisors at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. The road to recovery begins with 3 words: I need help. Don't wait. Get your life back today.
Andrew Spanswick is here, and Andrew's. Do you ever take any days off?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when
Are you taking a day off to get married?
Hopefully more than a day.
And Wendy Walsh and I have been around long enough. You can actually find us on YouTube. How they do. That was a great show, by the way.
It was a great show. How they do that.
We were the first people to actually look at the World Tower bombings and how they got in there and that sort of thing. Anyway, that's another subject. We were talking about relationships, and Wendy's book is the 30-Day Love Detox. I love that "the" on there. Why don't you call me Facebook. The Pat O'Brien?
The Pat O'Brien.
Yeah.
Well, that's who you are.
I hope I am.
Of course.
But all this comes down, Andrew, to addiction, doesn't it? I mean, mostly all these issues come down to addiction and the attempt at recovery.
Certainly, our mind is set up, as we've been talking about, has a dopamine system and it receives pleasure. And all these things that give us pleasure, like sex, are also mimicked by drugs. And a lot of the reasons that we see people use drugs and alcohol is that they get triggered or introduced to trying to make their feelings feel different by doing outside activities. Drinking and using drugs is a main one. And it's very common to hear people say, I used to drink and I was okay, and then my wife divorced me and I felt miserable and I drank a whole glass of whiskey and all of a sudden I had figured out a solution to my feelings.
But why do they go, well, I know, but Wendy, why do people just go right to that? I mean, I did, but...
Well, a couple things. One is we have a huge population of people in America who just don't get the love they need as infants and toddlers and grow up to have kind of attachment disorders, if you will. Their attachment style is that they're easily injured in personal relationships, or they avoid intimacy because it's terrifying for them. And then it wasn't modeled for them how to manage their feelings. So they'd have these feelings bubble up inside. Nobody taught them how to put it to words, and they don't have the language to express it. They don't trust that the other person they're going to give it to, these feelings, will be able to tolerate it because they can't tolerate it themselves. So it's easier to just numb that feeling.
Right. Also, we should also point out that alcoholism is a disease. It's a brain disease.
Absolutely.
And the alcoholic brain, mine certainly does, the number that you want is more of everything. And you just have to, there's a solution, and you have to arrest that. And I finally found a spiritual side and a way to figure out how I can get through life without drinking, and I have. And I'm a much better person, certainly much more handsome
of course
than I used to be. Most fears are your ego lying to you, too, right? I mean, if you break down all the... like I mentioned in my book, I'll be back right after this, St. Martin's. No, if I mentioned in my book that if I could get back all the time I worried about what I was going to do next and that sort of thing, I'd be 10 years old now. I mean, I just spent too much time worrying about things that weren't going to happen. I made them up.
It's very common in addicts, that they worry a lot, and that constant ruminating thinking, which can actually become anxiety disorders and depression. That's what we mostly see.
The thoughts become almost like a blockage, a mental blockage, and getting them. That's why I am thrilled about the growth of the mindfulness movement.
Yes.
There have been some hard scientific studies, even just only 8 weeks of a regular meditation program compared to a control group who didn't meditate, and lots of physical health improvements as well as positive mood, and I just think mindfulness is the best thing.
I just got into meditation. I've been working. It's hard. I mean, it's not easy to close your mind down.
That's why it's called a practice. But you only ever practice.
When I first started, I would breathe in, and then breathe out. And then breathe in. Oh God, did I return that call the other day? And then breathe out. Where's my iPhone right now? And then breathe. But Nick Tatan, who I follow, and you just have to learn how to sit. That's the name of one of his books. You just have to learn how to sit and close your mind up.
Our next guest, my old friend Dr. Drew, who's no stranger to the spotlight. Dr. Drew brought addiction out in the open and on your television with shows such as Celebrity Rehab and Loveline. Dr. Drew joined us for an hour conversation. And here's a bit of what he had to say.
Some of my favorite doctors in the world are Dr. Farber, who was my mentor, Dr. J, Dr. Dre, Dr. Zeus, Dr. Jekyll, because that's kind of what I went through, and Dr. Drew, who's with us now. Hello, Dr. Drew.
I just love being being placed in the same category as Dr. Seuss and Dr. Dre. It's awesome. And it would confuse me on Twitter with Dre anyway, because he gets my stuff, I get his. People just leave their
I think you have to be able to rhyme, though, right?
No, they just leave the W off, or they forget the W, whatever.
I left out Dr. Phil. For a bunch of reasons. Hey, Dr. Drew and I have been friends for about forever. And it's great to see you. You used to come over to my house at Christmas and hang out with everybody.
Yeah. Remember Kimmel and Kroll used to come with us?
Yeah. You guys would show up, and Bon Jovi and everybody. And we had these massive Christmas parties. And then Dr. Drew helped get me sober the first time. And now I'm 6 years in. How are you tonight?
I'm good. What can I do for you guys?
Well, don't swear.
I'm not on the podcast.
Because his podcast is one of the most popular ones in the country. Go to iTunes and get it. And when he and I do his or my podcast together, we don't swear on purpose, but
we just don't hold back.
We don't hold back, no. Andrew and I are trying to wrap ourselves around a couple new things here, Dr. Drew. And one is this, Andrew, this study about the consumption of alcohol. Yeah. That the CDC now says that if you are a binge drinker, and 88,000 people died last year from this, you're not an alcoholic.
Yeah, I think that's it's an interesting study that came out, and it sort of points to what I've talked a lot about on this show, that there's a difference between drug use, drug abuse, and then addiction. And in that abuse section, there's binge drinking. And we know that a lot of people do age out of binge drinking. If you look at a college population, fraternities, a lot of people binge drink, but then they go on to a more normalized drinking or abstinence just naturally as they go on. But that's a very dangerous time when drugs can be abused and often results in death.
They still have to be treated, right, Drew?
No, not necessarily. The point is well taken, what Andrew just said. I mean, that's absolutely true. I would, though, take issue with the magnitude of the effect that they're seeing in the study, because I think that the DSM-4, DSM-4 and DSM-5, the way they diagnose alcoholism, the criteria, I would take issue with. I think the three of us would see alcoholism as a spectrum disorder, and for there you have to hit the criteria of really losing control. And I would say, boy, somebody who's binging is on the verge of losing control. In all probability, if they have a family history and if they have some trauma, that's somebody's it's going to be a problem. And so to put them in the category of, well, they're just going to stop, that's a huge mistake based on this data.
And I also think that abuse isn't necessarily any better than addiction.
Well, and as you said,
in fact, sometimes it can be worse.
As you said, some people that are abusing die. They die for multiple reasons. They aspirate, they overdose on alcohol. People forget about that. They have withdrawal complications. They die from that. They get in car accidents.
Run over a family of four.
Right, and particularly with young people, you will look at every adverse health outcome. Anything you measure, you always find alcohol.
Where are we in addiction recovery and treatment right now? You've been in this business. Well, hold on. You've been in this business forever, and so both of you have. I'm just curious. I know how it's changed, but have we gotten a handle on it at all, Drew?
I almost don't. I'm overwhelmed by the question. We have great and effective treatments now. We really do. As always, the challenge is getting people to do the treatment. The only disease you have to convince somebody they have is alcoholism or addiction. Right. Everybody else, if I told them their prognosis was the same prognosis that many of my drug addict patients have, they'd have me airlifting them to whatever treatment center was necessary. But as soon as it's addiction, of course, you have to convince somebody they have the disease. You have to convince them that they
the language scares people, I think.
I think people, the disease doesn't want to acknowledge that you have this thing. And then it seems like something that shouldn't require the kind of intensive treatment that it does. You should be able to control it. You can't. It's a brain disease. It's extremely.
And also, I think, you and I see this a lot, but I think that we see clients that are attached to their addiction. I mean, it's not just denial, that it's actually that they want that drug. That is their best friend. And it has worked for them for a while.
They love it more than anything else. The story I always tell, two things. Mike Catherwood, I do Loveline with, has said he's sober 11 years, something now, 12 years. And he always says, I've still never found anything I love as much as drugs and alcohol. This is a guy who's got a child and a wife and a successful.
That's a pretty dramatic
statement.
Profound.
And I've got another patient who was a young man, opiate addict. I knew him in his early 20s, and he said, I was 18. He went down hard and fast as a young man and had a gun in his mouth, was going to kill himself, and he thought to himself, oh, but I can't leave my drugs behind. I love them too much. The same thought you'd have about your family is what they have, many drug addicts have about their drug of choice.
Sure.
When they're deep in it. And that's the biology. It's that same part of the brain that's been overtaken and replaced by the usual motivational priorities, work, family, health, survival. All those shrink, and the big one emerges, use. Without consulting consciousness. This is the pernicious part that people don't understand. It's not like a drug addict is thinking, I love these so much, or I want these so much. It's just all the other brain mechanisms have now been altered under the influence of this altered motivation, which is not any longer survive, protect your family, it's use.
And that's because it works for a while, right? I mean, you're trying to cure whatever the isms are.
I think I see that as early in the disease, and I give lectures to groups all the time, and people always, I'm pretty convincing once I lay out the argument.
Yes, you are.
And people then go, okay, I see why they can't stop. But why'd they use it in the first place? And all the codes want to be angry at the addict. And why?
Well, there's no moral ecology in this thing, right?
Well, I mean, my world. It exists in the world, not in our world.
I mean, one thing that I see though is that it's not just, even if drugs are painful, and they become almost untenable for the person to use anymore. They're still attached to using them, and they still want the effect. The effect, even though it's painful and sort of masochistic in a way, it's that need to feel different or not feel. And so
the greatest example is crack, because a crack user knows the moment they put that pipe up to their mouth, in 3 days, they'll be in the bathroom, paranoid, having spent a ton of money, miserable, horrible, looking outside their foil-covered windows, looking at the police up in the trees, or the uniformed officers is usually what it is. I've heard all kinds of uniformed officers. And they know it. They know it intellectually. But once they take that hit, so I always kid them. I go, so you stopped after, 50 hits then at least? Because you know you keep going. No, they can't stop.
You are listening to KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. If you or somebody you know are battling addiction, call one of our treatment advisors at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. The road to recovery begins with 3 words: I need help. Don't wait. Get your life back today.
What about the evolution of the way you look at treatment?
Me?
Yes.
The way I look at treatment.
I heard you the other day saying that you were sometimes sickened by
what's going on.
What's going on?
Yeah, I am sickened by it. I am deeply disturbed, and I'm disturbed. How to frame this in a way that is not? I don't want to sound too harsh in my opinion, but let me just say that the world of addiction is populated by people that really don't know what recovery is. Addiction treatment. They, particularly physicians, we're so, as physicians, if you're not a surgeon, all you have is chemicals to help change the course of illness. And so we are our philosophy as physicians is skewed towards giving a chemical to change the brain states. And I think that's great. However, that's never going to be the full solution in addiction. And unfortunately, we have people that are cutting their teeth on this notion that if we just find the right bullet, we'll be able to cure addiction. And it's just not going to be. Now, as a result, the addiction treatment field kind of splinters into groups where people are using something called harm avoidance, and people who are trying to restore people to a completely flourishing existence using abstinence-based treatment. And the problem is, at its basis, the problem is, first of all, there will never be a pill to, as I said, to completely cure addicts. But particularly in the case of opiates, there's unbelievable enthusiasm to give methadone and Suboxone. And it absolutely, it may be life-saving for some patients. It absolutely might be. And I have no quarrel with that. The problem is it's being given to everybody all the time.
Yeah, you can't get off Suboxone, right?
You got to select the population for who.
My frustration was I started in acute care psych, and my first company was Paradigm Health Systems, and I had 9 psychiatric hospitals throughout the Gulf South after I graduated from Tulane. And then it was really all I thought about was acute care psych. And I always saw substance abuse as sort of like, not really an issue. Because we'd have like one substance abuse group a week for our chronic acute care psych patients. And then as I learned more and more about substance abuse, and now I sort of have a blended view. I'm much more that, there's a lot of underlying psychiatric disorders that, promote addiction. There's definitely a compulsive element to addiction that probably has something to do with some sort of compulsive disorder that we're not really sure of. And then I've seen so many different types of addicts in my life. And one of the things that I worry about with some programmatic sort of things is that there's only one type of alcoholic personality or one way of being an addict.
Absolutely.
And I've seen many, many different ways that people become addicted, stay addicted, need to be addicted for whatever reason. One of the things that we've really been working at KLEAN just really hard is trying to figure out how to deal with what you're talking about, drug replacement, maintenance, and a harm reduction model, and then also really being firmly abstinence-based at the treatment level.
How do you select the right patient for each kind of treatment?
Well, so what we've done is we've created outpatient programs that run in the evening that are harm reduction programs. So we don't judge. We're like, okay, you want to use? Fine, come on in. Yeah. We'll join with you at that level. And then we'll design a cognitive behavioral sort of treatment plan, which sets limits for usage. And then if they go above them and below them, then we're examining and then joining with that client to see whether they really need to go into abstinence or not.
Drew, what do you think over the holidays and while people worry about each other or drink too much and that sort of thing? what should people, if you have a family member, and Andrew, you too, if you have a family member who's drinking too much or doing too much and he's in trouble, I know it's a simple question, but it's Thanksgiving week. What would you say? I mean, what do you say to them? Because I get it all the time. What do I tell my son? What do I tell my mom? What do I tell my dad?
It's not a simple question.
My first thing is listen. Because often when you're sitting around in a family environment and there's addiction going on, other family members will bring it up, or the addict will bring up some sort of crisis or problem. And that will give you an opportunity to actually have a conversation about healing and about hope. And I think that that's really the message that needs to go out there.
Yeah.
It's not about the person being morally wrong or the person somehow failing the family by being an addict. It's about identifying a problem and then coming up with a constructive, proactive solution.
Check your anger, check your resentments, check your
Absolutely.
desperation and fear. You got to check all that stuff. That's why we send people to Al-Anon to therapists, so they can put that somewhere else. You're not helping the addict get better with that stuff. And it's really important. We always say, what happens, when you're getting your instructions at a plane that's about to take off, is they put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on someone else. That's number one. You take care of yourself so you're in a position to be helpful for that person and to be clear with them and not rain down your own stuff upon them, which only makes them use
Another
more.
thing in families is people are very afraid of their own hypocrisy. Because it's a holiday and they're having a drink, and then the addict walks in the room who's having 20 drinks, and then they feel like, oh, I can't say anything because I'm having a drink.
Great point.
So, how you deal with that and when you find the right time to address it is really, really important.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol, but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.
With the 1979 World Figure Skating Championship and 5 U.S. Figure Skating Championships, pair skater Ty Babilonia's life seemed perfect, but with a devastating injury to her skating partner Randy Gardner and a grueling performance schedule, her life spiraled into addiction. Up next, Ty joins Andrew and I in studio to discuss her life in addiction and recovery.
First guest tonight is Ty Babilonia. Ty Babilonia, in the 70s, her and Randy Gardner were arguably the greatest pair skaters ever. They ran away with everything. In 79, they won the Worlds, and they won all the U.S. medals, and they were on track to win the gold, or at least we all said you guys were,
yes,
to win the gold at Lake Placid in 1980, in the Winter Olympics there. And then Randy had an injury that you actually didn't know about, right?
I knew he was hurt. I didn't know the extent of the injury because he was skating okay up until, that when you saw him fall. Mm-hmm. And Randy is a skater or an athlete who never fell. If anyone fell, it was me.
Right. And just to bring people back to this time period.
Yes.
The Russians had brought back this incredible pairs couple, and there was going to be huge competition, but you guys were everything. I mean, you were...
Well, we were the world champions the year before. Rodnina and Zaitsev had taken that year off to have a baby.
Right.
So we won that year, and so after we won, and Mr. Nix, our coach, he was very clear on saying, now your work is really cut out for you. So embrace this world championship for like 3 days, and then we're going back home to work because it's going to be rough. And it was rough. And it was just a lot of outside distractions that we weren't
well,
used
fame's
to.
a bitch. We said that. And
yes,
it was all on you, and you and Randy, obviously. But
right.
There was such a national... And by the way, Andrew might have been surprised of my skating skills.
I was.
Earlier today.
Yes, you were doing flying leaps.
No, we did a throw waltz jump.
Right.
And it was big.
How was my performance? How was my landing?
Perfect.
Yeah. Well,
it's shocking.
What do you expect?
Only perfection.
I know you were from a policeman's family. And
yes.
I know that you've talked about this, that when your dad is a cop, things are not spoken about. People keep things inside in that household.
Absolutely.
Is that part of it?
So cops don't snitch?
What does that mean?
Yeah, like
Cops don't
snitching,
snitch.
like they don't talk about.
No, but cops are taught
What's wrong with you?
Cops are taught to keep everything.
Drug dealers don't snitch on each other, and cops don't.
I don't know. I had a couple who did.
Yeah. Oh God.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yes,
you had
absolutely.
A family that didn't
Yes.
allow you to
There was nothing
get your emotions
outward.
out.
And, you know, and that I kind of caught on to that. I kind of took all that in, and I'm not that kind of person. I'm one who likes to show emotion and talk about things and don't sweep anything under the rug. So I'm sure that was also, there's so many factors in what happened in 1988 when I did crash.
And the crash came when you turned pro, right? And,
Yes, we were on the road working nonstop from 1980, from April 1980 up until I crashed in 88. We were working nonstop. We were turning down work. It was that much work. And part of the problem was I had a partner who was saying yes to everything. And I really didn't have a say in it. The manager said to do it, the agent said to do it, the partner said to do it, and I just kind of had to do it, even if I was tired. So I didn't.
Well, you were an investment too.
Absolutely.
For the ice capades and everybody else.
Yes, a lot of money.
Did you ever have anyone looking out for you besides yourself? You were,
No.
So you weren't really able to set boundaries at all?
No, I just kind of, it's like the train had left the station and hold on because it went. And I had a voice. I just didn't know I was allowed to use it.
So ever
as I
since you were
know
really
now.
young, was it like that? Like, I mean, you started skating at such a young age, correct?
Yes,
So
I started at 6 or 7. I met Randy at 8.
So when in your life were you not managed? How old when you finally
21.
21? Wow, that's a long time.
21.
And this is a common thing, skaters especially, because
We're
they
so
start
sheltered.
they start so young, and they are captivated by their coaches and really become your parents. I'm not going to speak for you, but they tell you everything to do and
Right.
how to do it and why. And
Yes.
I've known all the skaters, and they're all the same way.
Right.
That
You
they-
do as you're told. All I had to do, and Randy, and all of us, all we had to do was skate. Everything else was taken care of us. When you're amateur, you're so sheltered. Just get out there and perform. And then all of a sudden, we signed a contract with Ice Capades, a 3-year contract for 9 months on the road. And there are no parents. There's no, I didn't know who to trust. And I just was kind of lost. And that's when the drinking started.
Yeah.
With a simple glass of wine. A simple glass of wine.
And then you started gaining weight.
Gained weight.
So then you went to the diet pills.
I went to Black Beauties. Were going around.
Black Beauties.
What?
Well, that was
Yummy.
just pure. Isn't it,
Oh,
Andrew?
yum.
Isn't Black Beauty pure amphetamine?
It's pretty much, yeah.
It was going around in all the companies. That was the diet pill that the
with
showgirls took.
benzodiazepines to sleep.
I didn't know what was in it. I just knew, it worked.
Right.
It worked. So
Well-
that and the drinking and the whatever else I was doing, it was a horrible combination.
Yeah.
And then performing every night, sometimes 3 times a day.
Wow.
Let's put a professional look on this, because Andrew,
Okay.
and I went through this too, except I used every drug. I just
Yes.
stick to Black Beauties
Right.
and a lot of red wine. And by the way, just celebrated 6 years of sobriety, and you're
Congratulations.
right close with me, aren't you?
I'm the day before you.
Day
with
before
6
me.
years.
So
November
while you
4th.
were, so while you were getting sober,
Yes.
what's wrong with you, Jose?
What?
It's 24 hours of world record. But when you have fame, as Ty did, and you have the general public begging for her to come back and regain whatever they perceived you of gaining, and then you have controlling people, what
Yeah.
does that do to you?
Well, I think, like we talked about, developmentally, your life was really controlled by other people until you're 21, and then at 21, you're supposed to have adult skills, and you didn't
Right.
have them.
Right. There was no manual telling me how to be a professional skater.
And the expectations on you were not about you or your private life. It was about your public persona,
Yes.
which, as we
Well, it was
know
about
from
being-
most famous people, who you are in public is not who you are in private.
Well, it's the whole thing of you wake up and you, first of all, you demand, this is my story, in a business to be loved by strangers, for one thing, and you
Yes.
can't control that.
Right.
And secondly, you wake up and you don't say, I'm who I am. You say, I am who they want me to be.
Right.
And that's the problem. So now you're taking pills and now you're drinking
every night.
And how did that spiral? You said it worked, and I think Andrew and I talked about this last week.
a drink does work.
Yeah,
we don't suggest you do it, but
well, certainly when you start off, and that's what's so attractive about drugs and alcohol is that they do work for a little while for some people. And some people, they drink and they can't tolerate it, or they are scared of it and they don't use it. But people that are alcoholic or drug addicts, they tend to have that moment where they recognize that what they're using actually works for them for a little while. It stops them from feeling pain. And they start trying to cover up that pain. But eventually, unfortunately, the drugs and the alcohol get more painful than the pain they're trying to cover up. Then you have the pain from the addiction, and you still have all the underlying pain from before. So it becomes very, very complex to sort all that out.
So how did you sort it out? First of all, were you doing Courvoisier or cognac?
Eventually.
Yeah. Didn't you skate once on Courvoisier?
More
Am I
than once.
telling a secret?
Yeah, and I was pretty functional. I mean,
How do you think I knew that?
You saw the movie or something.
No,
don't
I didn't
know.
see the movie.
You read the People magazine, something. I don't know. How'd you know that?
I think I gave you the Courvoisier. No, I'm joking. But so how did you break through it?
How did I break through it?
Yeah, the drinking and the pills. I mean, you obviously you came out of it.
Well, it escalated. Like I said, in 1988, I was actually said I was going to quit skating, which I knew darn well I had nothing to fall back on, and all I kind of did was skate. But it was a dramatic move, and once I said that, crap hit the fan.
Yeah.
Because everyone's job was in jeopardy once I said this. So everyone was miserable, and I just said, you know what, I got to go. I'm out. So I hightailed it to Santa Barbara, which we were just talking about.
Not a bad place to go.
Not a bad place to go.
Montecito or Santa Barbara?
Actually, Montecito, in a little hotel on Coach Village, whatever that street is. And I took my skates, and I threw away my skates in Montecito.
There's not a lot of ice up there.
No, and I didn't. I was done with skating. I was done. This was me saying I'm done. So I came back home and told everyone, and my manager, just said, get a new pair because you have a tour to do. So I somehow got through this tour, but drinking before the performances and drinking after, and I was spiraling out of control, and the mood swings and the emotions were just, I don't know how Randy did it. God love him.
Well, who was there for you then? If Randy
no one, because I didn't share whatever I was going through. I didn't share it with anyone. I thought I could handle it myself.
Yeah, that's common. People feel they have this moral responsibility to sort of,
and I was afraid to say I was
hold on to
tired.
their own problems and not share them.
Right. I was afraid to say I'm tired, and it just.
It sounds like also you were in a position where people were really your friends. Like I might know myself, like one of my first companies that I had, I thought all these people were my friends. And then when that company went away, like maybe 2 people were still my friends. Because really they were my friends because they wanted to work for me and they wanted the job. But, and they were dependent on me to keep the company going for them to get paid. So,
No, I had friends. I guess I didn't know who to trust. And like I said, I thought I could handle everything myself. And obviously I couldn't. So I came home, got through the tour, and fell through the cracks and tried to take my life. It's all documented. And
you had a bottle of pills, right?
Sleeping pills and Courvoisier.
Yeah.
And the light went on as I was in the ambulance getting my stomach pumped. The light, something clicked and said, you have a voice, start using it. And after that, everything changed because I started using my voice.
Ty Babilonia is our guest, one of the most famous and popular skaters ever, still is.
Thank you.
And still on tour, right? Aren't you?
No, not on tour, but still skating. Randy and I are into our 46th year together.
Wow.
It's ironic that one of your best moves was the death spiral, in pairs. So
we had a good one.
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
Keep that head right by the knee.
Close to the ice.
Close to the ice,
yes.
right. So how did you, so now we're at the point where you're a big girl.
Yes.
I'm
big girl with a voice, a little voice.
Yeah, I'm interested in this whole concept. Andrew, you can help us, and then we'll let Ty talk about it, because I had somebody call me today and said they read my book, and they said, I'm sorry I didn't reach out to you when you were going through all this.
Yeah.
I got some of that too.
Yeah, but people, are you saying that people don't notice this, or they just don't want to get involved?
I think like a lot of illnesses, not just alcoholism, people are afraid. Like if people are dying or sick, people don't want to go around them, even if they're good friends with them. And they'll call and they'll say they want to come around or they want to do something, but really they're nervous and scared. And the other thing you see with addicts is a lot of people are angry. They're angry that the person's an addict and that they're out of control. And that
they think it's a moral issue.
They think it's a moral deficit, and
Right.
they don't know how
They
to
don't
help them, and they're
understand.
so frustrated, and they don't understand the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the show's about, is trying to show people that the behavior is really the drugs and how it's affecting the person. And once they get better, they'll return to being more normal.
How about other skaters? They never said, "Are you okay?"
Not
Anybody
even my
on the
partner.
tour?
No, no one.
So everybody,
After the-
it's interesting how everybody is in denial, right? The whole system of
Right.
people you were with were in denial about your problem.
I think because money played a huge factor.
Yeah.
It's
Well, we see that a lot with famous people.
Because
right?
they made money off of you.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ty and Randy were bringing in the money, and once part of the team kind of fell through the cracks, that was trouble.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.
Weed, grass, dope, reefer, no matter what you call it, marijuana is a hot topic, and with more and more legislation and legalization, it's here to stay. On our marijuana episode, we talked to High Times editor-in-chief Dan Skye on the current state of marijuana in the U.S. Here's what he had to say.
Joining us now live, I don't know where he is, but Dan Skye, who is he's in New York. I guess 718, that'd be New York. Should we give your number out, Dan, on the line, on the phone here? No. Dan, welcome. How are you?
What, are you trying to get me busted here?
No, you're the last person
He is
to
in
get
New
a
York,
bust.
so-
Yeah, you're in New York.
New York City, that's right.
Well, they've lessened the laws there, so you're not going to get handcuffed.
Well,
but
they aren't that good yet. They aren't that good yet. You can still, it's a long haul. I was just listening to your last guest, and it is a long haul. We're still behind the eight ball on this.
Yeah, Dan's been with New Times or High Times rather, for 20 years, and the magazine has exploded. It's actually a beautiful magazine. It's and it's for sale and it's expensive. Why is it so expensive?
Yeah. Why is it so expensive?
Expensive. It's the same price as any other magazine.
You must be getting a lot of ads, though, now. Your ad revenue must be booming.
Actually, it has. Over the last 2 years, we've increased like 35, 40 pages.
Wow.
Everybody's coming to us. So when you look at Sports Illustrated or Time now, they're at about 68 pages. We're at about 170 pages.
Well, nobody buys Sports Illustrated anymore. They see it online. Now, listen, what has been the reaction? And I know it's a big question, but with the 4 states and the legalization coming in California and possible national legalization, I know there's a lot of demands on your time. What do you think of all this? You said behind the eight ball, but are we getting ahead of ourselves on the marijuana issue?
Well, it's very, very encouraging having all these states go legal. But remember, there are still 46 states that don't allow adult responsible use of marijuana. And in some of these states, for example, Kansas and Nebraska, you're taking your life in your hands, literally. You can get major prison time for possession of an ounce. So we still have a long, long way to go. And hopefully, and Obama could do this. He has the power. He could issue an executive order and change marijuana from a Schedule I drug. And perhaps it might be nice to see not scheduled at all. It has no right being on this list with any of those poisons.
Dan Skye is our guest from High Times Magazine, which is now a middle-aged magazine. Did you ever think this magazine would last this long?
I don't know. Remember that? Don't trust anybody over 30.
I do. I think I said that a bunch of times.
We've been through for 4 decades, so we've had our ups and downs, and right now we're having this resurgence that is unbelievable, and it's great.
What's your responsibility, do you think, Dan, on whether or not on informing people of what Andrew here was saying about THC levels, and we know it's legal, and diversion? You can live some states and buy it in another, and that's not right either by law. But what's your position on that?
Well, before we let's not get too ahead of ourselves as far as THC is concerned, because THC has medical value as well.
Exactly.
And so when we start taking all the THC out of pot, we're not doing ourselves any good. We are still, remember, we're like what we were with corn a century ago. We knew we could eat it, we could feed it to the animals. Now we have it, we use it for everything from fuel, and it's in all our foodstuffs and all. And so then we're at the same point with marijuana right now. We are just beginning. We're laying the foundation of this new industry. And it's I don't think there's any turning back. I think everyone knows that.
Yeah, I think Dan, you're absolutely right that there's no turning back. The question that I've been posing, though, is that what responsibility do we have to sort of create the regulations that control marijuana and use it as a drug properly? And how does what agency is going to do that? How's that going to be regulated?
Well, I suppose it's going to come under the aegis of the FDA, but I really do believe that it should be all the harnesses should be taken off completely, and I think we're going to move in that direction. It's really an evolutionary thing. I wish it could be sold as it is. I wish it was like tomatoes in the backyard. I wish you could have roadside stands selling the best cannabis that's being grown outdoors in Connecticut, where they have roadside vegetable stands. I'd like to see it like that, and I'd like to see coffee shops come. So I really want to see the same kind of tolerance that there is in Holland, although, of course, that's eroding a bit. But I would really like to see coffee shops in New York City. And this is not such a far-fetched idea.
Well,
can you imagine the tourism in any of our great cities that you would encourage by allowing coffee shops for people to just sit down and have a smoke while they're touring this wonderful city of ours?
Well, there's a model for that, because we all used to drink bad coffee until Starbucks came along. And now, I'm serious, and now people are addicted to Starbucks because it's good coffee. I'm not sure that I want everybody walking around smoking marijuana. We're not talking about walking around. We're talking going into coffee shops. No, I understand that. I'm just saying my position is I could care less as long as you don't run over me or a family of four. And I
don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
See, that's the first thing the politicians bring up. They'll bring up driving, and the fact is there has been no change in. As a matter of fact, there's been fewer fatalities driving in Colorado. There is more and more evidence coming out that people who smoke pot are better drivers, and this is something that we also have to get around our head around as well. That people are not bad drivers when they're smoking pot. Believe me, they're showing up in dispensaries in their cars. And they're driving away. I mean, not they're smoking in their cars, but most people who do use marijuana medicinally are using it every day. So let's get realistic about this.
Yeah, I'm on your side. I Timothy Leary was a dear friend of mine. We did a lot of drugs together, and we drove around on acid. So
I don't see how any of that justifies it, honestly.
No, I don't want Dan.
I think Timothy Leary is really the poster child of good driving.
Well, I mean, Timothy Leary, though, there was a point with Timothy, though, in that there was so much excess that it kind of ruined that whole movement, right, Dan?
Well, LSD is we champion LSD as well, but it's not in the same realm as marijuana. LSD is a wonderful eye-opening substance and should be used carefully by adults. But I think we know it's I think really what we're talking about is adult responsible use of cannabis. We know that it's a benign substance. We know that it's innocuous. And it's time to get real about it. So,
well, Dan, in some ways I agree with you. In some ways, though, I do have to say I've met a lot of people and treated a lot of people that have had psychiatric issues related to chronic marijuana smoking. So they paranoia, panic attacks, drug-induced psychosis.
I think you'll find most of those people were already prone to that to begin with, and
absolutely, I agree with you. There's a threshold for everybody, but we're not educating people about exposure to marijuana can actually push a certain group of the population over that threshold. I mean, you can say alcohol doesn't really hurt anybody except for the 10% of people that are alcoholics or 12% that are alcoholics, but there's still that 12%, and you have to address that responsibly if you're going to regulate.
Well, I'm not saying that it's a panacea by any means, but the fact is we're talking about, once again, adult responsible use. Nobody. If you legalize, you're not going to see an increase in marijuana use. It's going to stay pretty much the same.
Right.
The people who are smoking now are smoking, and they're not smoking more. They're not smoking. Jack Daniels is legal, for Christ's sake, so I don't run down to the corner and buy Jack Daniels just because I can.
But you're not really answering my question, though, because we agree with that. I agree with that. I agree that marijuana.
Jack Daniels, you know what you're getting. getting Jack Daniels.
You don't know what's going on with pot all the time, and also you don't, kids get it, adolescents get it.
But the thing is, we are creating this infrastructure already in Colorado.
Okay.
There is mandatory testing of strains and so forth. Yes, I agree. There has to be some kind of regulatory commission because we want people smoking healthy substances. So yeah, there has to be some aegis for this. I completely agree.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/KLEAN Radio, all across the country. A lot of big news coming up with this network. Big things are happening. Hey, Dan, you're on your way to Amsterdam. Times are changing over there, too, right?
Yeah, I mean, as we seem to be getting more and more favorable toward marijuana, they have a very conservative government. And although the coffee shop scene is still going strong, about 150 coffee shops have been forced to close down because of new regulations. A lot of these regulations are ridiculous. They've had a coffee shop going since the early 70s, and suddenly they say, okay, let's not have dispensaries around schools. Now, the dispensaries have never allowed any kids into their shop. The kids know that it's a cannabis shop. They know it's for adults only, but suddenly you have these new rules that come in, and suddenly all these people who have going concerns have to shut down. And it's the same kind of thing you see in California, with moratoriums in cities trying to shut down dispensaries, even though they do no harm whatsoever. So,
Dan, it's interesting because my cousins actually grew up in Amsterdam. They were born in London and went to Amsterdam, and I actually came to America from England at about the same time. And so my experience with them is, as an 18-year-old, I went to Amsterdam and visited my cousins, and I wanted to see what it was all about, and they had no interest in it. Whatsoever. They were, and it's funny, if you're raised with something like that, there seems to be less of a sort of thrill about it. I mean,
I think you're right. I mean, that is the way, and I think we're seeing that in Colorado as well. I mean, I think there's a lot less stress when you can get your pot the next day, the next morning. You don't feel like you're going to Jones out. It's a nice feeling.
Dan Skye is our guest. He's the editor of High Times magazine. I asked the stupidest question ever in Amsterdam. I was there doing one of the Olympics that I hosted, and we were there following an athlete or something. And I said to my tour guide, we were on the canal, and I said, what's the deal with this neighborhood? Has everybody got the same name?
Right.
And he said, why do you say that? I said, well, all the mailboxes have the same name on it. He said, well, that means mail.
Good job.
Good job, huh?
I think you're still in the coffee shop there.
Yeah, I know.
What about this issue with edibles and kids' edibles? Things like these juices and gummy bears, and that just seems a little irresponsible as well.
Well, once again, we're talking about adult use. I mean, I can't stand we always bring up the kids.
Yeah, but we say this with cigarettes, right? Like that, Joe Camel wasn't good advertising to kids, and that we knew that, the tobacco companies' leaked documents were leaked that show that they were marketing to kids because they knew if they get brand loyalty early that they would keep it. So the same thing's going to happen with marijuana.
Well, wait a minute. Cannabis is not marketing toward kids. I can guarantee you that right now. It does not. The dispensaries do not. No one is. The fact is, there's a very, very strong edible scene based upon candy, and that's the people's first experience. Right now, there are many, many food professionals coming to the industry who are changing the food industry completely. So once again, we're still evolving. Once again, kids are not the issue. It's adults being able to use the substance responsibly. Let the parents take care of their children. Let's not depend on the tobacco companies or anybody else, because they don't.
Yeah,
that is not.
Yeah, it all comes down to responsible parenting at the end anyway. Did you ever imagine, Dan, that there would be, hedge funds now for marijuana? And I think there was a retreat in Henderson, Nevada over the week that they were all saying, buy marijuana futures and hedge funds and that sort of thing. Are they ever going to get control of the money here? Because you can't bank a lot of the money. I mean, what about that side of it?
Well, that's tough. This is an all cash business, and once again, we have a long way to go. Some of those penny funds I wouldn't invest in yet. I think we're not quite there. I think people should, if people have money to invest in a business that is making something, just like any other company in America. This is a company that is actually producing raw materials here in America. Invest in a company that's doing that. Don't invest in the stock market. Invest in a company. That's what I say.
Dan, have a safe trip to Amsterdam. Be careful over there. Hey, thanks for joining us. I think the magazine. I think you provide some some perspective in this whole thing. There are so many issues involved, and I like that the magazine addresses these, especially online as well.
I like the idea, Dan, also just that you have a forum where people could speak, and it would be nice to see some differing opinions on there as well from the other side a bit more.
If you or somebody you know is struggling with marijuana addiction, call KLEAN Treatment Centers, 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Treatment advisors are standing by.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.